Okay, so to begin with, my name is Jason Yates, and what we're going to be discussing today is going to be the characteristics and instructional needs of students with autism. So let's get started here. We'll just do a general overview of our topics. Um, Topics to be covered are, as stated here, the social relationships, communication, the student interest and stress, and the diversity of students with ASD, which is what we refer to as the autism spectrum disorder from here on out. Then we'll go ahead and we'll dive into the instructional support topics that are going to be covered. That's the responding to the behavior, fostering social interactions, and communicating with the students. Okay, so as we get started here, um, we will see that we have, when we're discussing social relationships, for anyone who's ever worked around or has know someone with a child who has autism, we know that the greatest difficulty is in the social interaction. They tend to be loners. Um, it's just one of their many characteristics. They tend to, if they do latch on, it's on to one individual. Seems to be able to, usually a family member that usually is able to help out the most. I personally have a friend who has a daughter, and she just graduated from high school, so she spent her time in the general education class, and she actually got to develop very well. In Garnett, Kansas, they have a really good program and success rate with ASD and behavior intellectual issues. So um, they're not going to learn in the same manner. They may avoid people, and they also may cause people to avoid them, unfortunately, by the way that they act or what they decide to talk about or their interests that are. And so people tend to stray away from them as well as them isolating themselves, unfortunately. When we talk about communication, um, as with any disability, there's different levels. A lot of a lot of students with ASD have problems communicating. There's also different levels, so we have to keep that in mind that we're not labeling students with ASD in the same category. Okay, they will have a greater ability to communicate than others. Some may have poor language skills. They may not be vocal at all. Is another unfortunate aspect of it that they're not wanting to be vocal. So when we communicate with them, we have to know that they've got the difficulties. We need to know what range or what level their difficulty is, and by this we're going to have to get with the family, get with the special education teachers as well, and determine what their level of communication is, because we know by looking at these bullet points what characteristics we can expect when it comes to communication with these students. Again, we're going to go back to ties in with their social interactions, the student interest. A lot of times, what we see with um, ASD students is that they have very limited, narrow interests. It's not that they're lazy. It's not that they're unmotivated to learn. It's that their hardwiring of their brain, it sets them on a path to be hyper focused on mostly 1 to 2 subjects. Um, and that's usually where it lies. I've listed a few here of the characteristics of their interest and some of the subjects that they're actually interested in. And again, as we spoke in the social interactions, this could be a hindrance to them acclimating socially and befriending people, because they drive people away with the hyper intense focus that they have on a particular interest. And so other kids don't feel the need to hang around and converse about the same thing every time. So now this seems to be the biggest problem that I've found, is what causes student stress. If you've ever worked around someone or been around a family member who has a child with ASD, the stress levels and what causes the stress is very minimal at times. They have frequent outbursts. They have uncontrollable vocal outbursts or behavior outbursts. People tend to stay away from crowded events, crowded places, busy streets. Just so many triggers that create the stress that you and I or a normal child wouldn't expect to. And especially when we're talking about a classroom. See, we really have to think about the amount of stressors that we can create in a classroom, which is unfortunate because a lot of things are when we respond, we're clapping our hands or we've got these chants sometimes with elementary students and things like that. And we really have to stay away from things such as those. So when we go to do these fun things for most of the kids, we can't leave behind and leave out what could be a stressor for students with ASD. So we really want to create that environment that they can thrive in. Biggie here when we were talking about the diversity of students with ASD. As I mentioned previously, we don't want to put a label. As you can see, like there's so many stereotypes, or they can't communicate, they don't take care of themselves, they're frazzled, their hair's a mess, that they have intellectual disabilities, and it's not always true. There's so many different levels of the autism spectrum that highly functioning people with autism, and then you have the lower function that do have the intellectual disabilities that do actually have their problems communicating. They're not going to read. They're not going to write, most likely. If they do, if they're in the middle of the range, they may have, by the time they're a senior in high school, they may still be in elementary math or middle school math at top, but it's not always the case. So we don't want to know that we're bringing in a student with ASD and treat them as though they're either an advanced ASD student or that all of them are the lower level with the intellectual disability, such as that. So if we do that, then we're not going to teach to the student. We're wasting our time, we're wasting their time, and we're not helping them in the least. So we're going to jump on over and we're going to talk about instructional support for the students who have ASD and what we can do in the classroom for them. Behavior issues. Number one, with families, the parents, they've learned to deal with responding to behaviors. I think we all know from anything we've read that ASD students prefer routine. The unfortunate thing is when they don't have that routine, that's when their behaviors start to change. My friend, he never looked forward to the end of the school year. His daughter was used to that routine and set in that routine, and it was always a disturbance in their household. And it's unfortunate, So they started finding a summer program, which was still a change, which was still a stressor, but it was another way to build that routine for a few months. Because even though the breaks and they had to get back into it, it was worth it. We also need to know what's causing the problem. So you always want to search. Again, we're going to talk with special educators, we're going to talk with family members, and we're going to determine what causes these outbursts, what cues can we look for these outbursts, and in response to those behaviors, what can we use to prevent those behaviors? As you can see, I'd listed a couple here with the visuals, and we all know those visuals may involve a schedule. It may involve pictures to show what they're feeling, what they need if they can't communicate well, but they're highly cognitive enough, they could use a picture to determine what it is that they want at that point in time. And that's what we need to seek out, these ways. Fostering social interactions, I truly feel, would be one of the hardest ones as teachers for us to create, because we know they're hyper-focused. We know this hyper-focus can create a sense of alienation where other students don't want to be around them. This is, again, it's fortunate and unfortunate, but we have to collaborate with the educators, the special educators, the general education, and the family members, because we need to know what we can do, what we've seen work in the past, what could work in the future, as far as what we can do to get this going. Um, and then one at the very bottom, and I do want to speak on it, is that there may be something we can use with video models, because they love visual aids are a great help with any student, and with repeating and repetitive use, we may be able to allow a learning environment to take place that normally wouldn't take place. So when we're talking about communicating with students, again, here we talk about we're collaborating again with as many people as we can, as many people that have came in contact with and continue to. Those visual schedules. Put up a schedule, put up a routine, what we know that they want, what they can use, and we need to work with that, work for that, really, really strive for those visual aids, and let them know if there's an upcoming change. Make them aware of small changes throughout the day. We're going to lunch at a different time, we're going to do this. Prepare them for that. So in summary, it's all that we've learned is there are instructional supports. We know the basic characteristics of students with ASD. We know that the visual aids are a huge help. We know that we need the collaboration of all members. And we just have to understand that we've got to create this nurturing, stress-free environment that is hard to create, but it can be done. It's done daily. And just know that there are plenty of people and assets out there to help make this work. So good luck, and I wish you the best.